it's amazing to see fans obviously out there, and it's a home field advantage for us.
You are now tuned into Homefield Advantage with your hosts, the GM, Justice General Radford, the Caveman, Michael Lisman. Enjoy.
What is going on, Bills Mafia? Welcome to Homefield Advantage. I am doing half of the hosting duties tonight. My name is Justice General Radford, and I have my partner in crime right here with me, Michael, the Caveman Lisman. First of all, what's going on, Mike? How you doing tonight?
I'm doing awesome, man. I'm looking forward to having some very solid conversation with both of you. We have a very special guest this week, and I'm looking forward to being able to not only, pick his brain, but also just let him, get whatever words out he has to say. And I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. Somebody who is in the trenches, I would say, with us, in Bills Mafia, ironically, in the trenches, right? That's a podcasting idea. But anyway, he is, he's somebody who's really involved with Bills Mafia. He has his own podcast, the Off Tackle Podcast with John Fina, of course. And that is obviously Bills Legend John Fina. How are you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing all right, fellas. I'm doing okay, I guess. Probably like the people of Buffalo, people of Texas, and all across the country, and I guess across the world, man. Look, happy to be here. It's horrible circumstances following, what's been going on, but I'm really glad to be here with Justice and the Caveman. I love it. Love it a lot. Thanks for having me on the show. And I pumped you guys for a little information about what it'd be about, and you said it's a show about nothing, like Seinfeld. So I thought, oh, now I'm screwed. But before we start, if you don't mind, I just want to acknowledge just the horrific nature of what's going on. With not just with what we saw in Buffalo and in Texas and in Waukesha and in California, but it's dismaying and concerning. And because I'm kind of woven into Bills Mafia now on Twitter, which I just absolutely love doing, I think it makes it even more horrific, because those are places far away from me, but being woven into the fabric of the fascinating and wonderful people of Bills Mafia, the stories just really hit home. And I don't know where we go as a country. I don't know what we're doing. I'm a fan of changing some gun laws, and I'm a fan of trying to understand better the mental health issues that are going on. And I'm concerned about the quality of parenting, and I'm concerned about the quality of see something, say something. So this is coming off horrible. And it's really the first time I've talked to anyone outside of my family about this. And I knew it would be clumsy because there are just so many conflicting feelings. And I'm guessing you guys are sledding the same slope. And just thanks for letting me get my piece out.
No, absolutely. We echo the same sentiment. I know for me personally, Jefferson is right around the corner for me. Literally is the closest grocery store to my apartment. And so that affected the community greatly, right? And to see how all of us rallied together and how it brought unity amongst backgrounds, even though what happened was so devastating and was a targeted attack, it brought us all together. And ultimately it led to some feel-good moments and things like that. And then to turn around the very next week and to see something like that happen again, with children, I don't, things like that is really hard to process,
And it, my first apartment in Buffalo was on Linwood between Utica and Ferry. So that was right near me too. And I think that also kind of made it a little bit more real.
Yeah.
I have to say, I hate, and I don't know. I mean, I'm Catholic, so I got to look out for the lightning bolt. But I hate that we call these people alleged alleged. And then I also hate when we take them alive, because I just, then we're going through the judicial process at the cost of millions and millions of dollars, and the victims' families have to keep seeing the image. It's so much. I don't know. I'd just rather have them be put down in their spot. And sorry, Caveman, we cut you out, man. I know you probably got similar.
No, don't apologize. I mean, there's so many emotions that go into, the state of our country right now. And, there's just so many feelings that, they hit me once and they kind of branch off into a new sense of anger and then another sense of anger, just because there are so many different avenues that my mind travels down when thinking about these events. First off, I start with, I see the event, of course, the event itself, whatever it is, whenever tragic shooting or terrorist attack happens, of course, upset about that. And then I'm upset about who they attacked. And then I'm upset about, how they got the gun. I'm upset about where they got the gun from. And then I'm upset about, why isn't the country doing something about it? It's just this endless road of anger. And something that eats me alive personally is the feeling of helplessness. I mean, even when, growing up playing sports, it's so frustrating. I know it's not fitting to, equate something like this, but just for the sake of, getting my feelings off my chest, whenever I was on the bench and I was seeing my team losing, for example, and I knew that in myself, I can't just put myself out there, but, I feel helpless. Like I want to go out there and do something about it, but I knew I couldn't. It's not the same feeling by any stretch, but just to kind of equate what I'm trying to get at. I sit here and, there's so many people like myself, like you guys, that feel the same way, that are frustrated. And we just all feel so helpless as a band of people, and it's the most frustrating feeling in the world.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, that is the hardest part, and it's almost like you just want to push it all down because you don't want to think about how you can't do anything. I mean, without turning the show into a political sideshow, I think the problem with all of our politicians, and I think maybe 10% of them are worthwhile, is that they are now in a position where none of the policies or laws that they claim to want or happen to enact have any effect on their lives. So they're completely disconnected from the consequences of anything that they legislate for or against. And that's just nauseating to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I was having a similar thought earlier, just like you look at the history of the country and they ban alcohol for one reason or another. They have a war on drugs for one reason or another. They're now trying to ban abortion for one reason or another. But like guns is where it's just like, no, we're not taking that step. But again, I don't mean to get too political. It's just something that's always really.
Yeah. And I think another huge part of the problem is, I mean, you and I could go offline, Justice, and you're going down a line of thinking that I would challenge you on from my perspective, and then you would challenge me back. And at the end, we'd shake hands, give each other a hug, and have a long drink, and we'd be friends. And I would respect you because
Absolutely.
we have a reasonable conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And this idea of battering people into your position or your side of the argument is just exhausting.
Communication is key.
And I won't engage in any of that. But let's move on. Let's not talk about me anymore. Let's talk about me. I mean, let's talk about Michael bringing the do-rag back one episode at a time.
Every single show, I got the colors to match the theme. We're a Bills type of NFL show. The NFL's red, white, and blue. The Bills are red, white, and blue. If I'm talking about the Chiefs, it's red and white. If I'm talking about this team, I got every single color under the sun in my drawer right there, and I can pull them all out if I had.
That's awesome. I really need to get better. I'm going to come back for a couple games, and I got to get a little guidance. I got to do a little bit better with this side of the room over here. And, I mean, Joe Miller just popped in, from the Off Tackle show, and I'm like, here's the deal I make for anybody, and this has happened a couple times already. If you come to Tucson, Arizona, we're going to lunch, right? You reach out to me. I've had a few people reach out to me on Twitter. So when you come, I'm going to take you to lunch. We're going to hang out. maybe people can give me some tips on how to do my studio, because Joe Miller is just not helping. So, and I don't know where I don't even know where my studio is going to be next season, because there's going to be an Italian girl living here.
I mean, I get made fun of by almost everybody that I talk to on here because I have a damn Jack Eichel jersey sitting behind me, and people laugh at me constantly about it. So I might look a little bit flashier than somebody else, but I have some very outdated equipment standing behind me right now.
Okay, thank God, because then I don't feel alone.
Yeah. You guys see my background. It's nothing impressive. So, but today we do have the benefit of having a legend, on our show. And so why is every Joe's asking why you blaming everything on him.
Joe knows he's my my scapegoat on everything, and he's okay with it, and I deem it so.
All right, so so we wanted to have a show. We like to give flowers, to the people who, are heroes, right? These are the guys we look up to and things like that. So we kind of want to get to know John Fina type of thing, right? So first of all, okay, Rochester, Minnesota. All right. First of all, how long did you live there? What's the environment like there? How you grew up and everything like that.
Yeah, so I on a personal note, my parents are really old and my mom is not doing awesome right now. And my sister had sent a picture of my parents on their wedding day, and it's kind of like their iconic picture, like caught like going up some stairs, and I put it on Twitter, even though it was not their anniversary. And I said, this is where it all started, in Rochester, New York, because my whole family's from Rochester, New York. And a lot of people were freaking out, like, we didn't know you were a Western New Yorker. Well, it's only semi-true. My dad and mom grew up in Rochester. I still have tons of family out there. My father went to the Air Force, Korea, non-combat, and then came back on the GI Bill, went to St. John Fisher, and then did his medical school in Ottawa, Canada, and then did his residency at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, which is where I was born. So people say, Rochester, Minnesota, you're not Rochester, New York, but they just kind of fit together like that.
Parallel that you'd be a legend in Buffalo, New York, an hour away from Rochester, and be born in Rochester.
Right. It's insane. It was magical, nothing short of magical. But my dad, by the time he got to residency in Minnesota, already had 4 kids. My brother Jimmy was born there, and then 2.5 years later, I'm born, and he graduates, and they're like, we're getting the hell out of the frozen tundra. So
is that where Arizona came from?
That's where, they ditched everybody and went out west. They were looking at Albuquerque, Tucson, Phoenix, and San Diego. And my mother fell in love with the mountains here in Tucson, which I can see right out my window. And the rest is history. But that was the year I was born. So I'm more or less a desert rat, if you will.
Okay. All right. So you only have real experience with Arizona. So speaking of experience in Arizona, we did some digging, some research on you. We read that you were all state at South Point Catholic High School. So my question to you is, becoming all state, especially in that part of the country, was that where you realized I could play in the league one day?
No, I never even thought about being a player as a sort of realistic goal. Now, we didn't have a team, so I was a Pittsburgh Steeler. I mean, I was Mean Joe Green. That was it. I'm Mean Joe Green. And all my brothers played football. And, when I got to the University of Arizona, which was only one of 3 scholarships that I had, I wanted to be a doctor. And I was just I wanted to be a doctor like my dad. And going to school for free gave me the opportunity, and having all the tutors and taking biology and physics and organic chemistry and all the courses that I needed to take, having free tutors was just amazing. And then I know it sounds so silly, right?
Sounds amazing. Free
tutors. It doesn't sound like that like I don't deserve it because it wasn't my dream. But what happened was, I'm the type of person who just like I don't like to not know the answer. I don't like to suck at
Yeah,
stuff,
me
right?
too.
So I wasn't a great student because I wanted to get an A. I just didn't like the feeling of being in a test and not knowing the answer. It was like a really shitty feeling. So I worked hard in the classroom, and then I was a defensive lineman, and I got switched to offensive line. And this is a funny story. This is true. I come back from spring break after my third year, because I did 5 years, and I can't find my locker. I'm in the locker room. I'm like, I go to 98, and I'm like, where's my stuff? And I start just walking around the locker room, and I find my locker, and it's got a 70 on it. So I went over to the equipment guys. I'm like, what's going on? And they're like, oh yeah, you moved to offensive line. I was like,
what was your old number?
I could 98.
Okay.
I couldn't get like a pager notification on that. So I was actually crushed. I did not want to play.
Really?
Yeah, I did not want to play offense.
What was your favorite part about playing defense that you didn't want to play on offense?
I just loved the tenacity, the kind of delivering a blow thing. It seemed a little more like freedom. And I didn't really care for offensive linemen. I thought they were a bunch of big fat babies. So I was like, nah, I ain't doing that. Anyway, so I struggled through 1 year with a wonderful man as our coach, but not a great technique coach. And I was super skinny, super weak, super slow. So I needed somebody to teach me how to play the position. And before my senior year, actually at the end of my junior year, I'm meeting with this coach, the new coach, and he says, if you really work at this, somebody would pay you to play this game. And I was like, bull crap. It's like, I'm serious. So to me, that was just a challenge. Like, okay, what do I got to do? He's like, well, you got to come early, leave late, come in your lunch hour, watch film, learn football. And I'm like, what else I got to do? So that's what I did. And worked out great. I was totally unwanted, really. And then I went to the combine. I was lucky enough I think I got the combine invitation because I did really well in I got invited to the Shrine game. And I think I only got invited to the Shrine game in San Francisco because my head coach, Dick Tomey, was going to be, had a role in the game. Mm-hmm. So I went there and I crushed it in practice. And then I got an invite to the combine, and I ran super fast. I jumped really high. I did more than 20 on the bench, which is really kind of the benchmark. I was looking for a different expression. Now I sound stupid. So then all of a sudden I had 17 coaches from the NFL coming to work me out, including Bill Belichick, which was the most amazing workout I had. It's absolutely incredible. In
what sense? Like what made?
So I didn't. So this kind of goes back. Like I finished my senior year, and Pat Hill, who was my coach, my position coach and mentor, says, you need an agent. Why don't you go up to Phoenix and talk to these guys? I literally went and I knocked on the door and I'm like, hey, I need an agent. And they were like, who the hell are you? And they're like, yeah, sure, we'll sign you. You're worthless, but we'll sign you, right? So a few months go by, and then the combine happens, and then I get a call. It's like 10 o'clock at night, and Bill Belichick was the head coach of Cleveland in 1992. And my agent says, you got to drive up to Phoenix right now. Bill wants to see you at 6 a.m. or 6:30 in the morning at Scottsdale Community College. So I hectic, like pack up, drive up there, get a hotel. I can't sleep. I'm freaking out. I get to the Scottsdale Community College. We got on the field, and he literally one-man lines me to death for like an hour. All offensive line positions, tight end, defensive line. He had me running routes. I mean, he was throwing me the ball. He was trying to kill me to death. And I was nuts. And then at the end of the workout, he's like, you done? And I'm like, I got more. And he's like, that's enough. And he just kind of looked, he's not very talkative. He just kind of looks at me, looks at the ground. He looks back up at me, looks at the ground, and he, under a muffled kind of voice, he says an expletive. And I'm like, what's wrong, coach? He's like, you're a first round pick and I won't be able to get you. And I was like,
oh, wow.
Oh my God. I mean, I'm a kid who's like, people were thinking 4th, 5th, 6th round. And then I got a head coach telling me that I'm first round material. I swear I peed myself. It was insane.
Wow. So you didn't realize you were a first round pick until basically essentially right before the draft.
Yeah.
Wow. So what was it like when you got that call, that you were going to be the pick of the Buffalo Bills?
So, I mean, projection is one thing from a coach. My parents had made plans to go to Spain with their buddies and see our Spanish exchange student family. And my parents were like, should we cancel? I'm like, nah, it won't be a big deal. If I get drafted at all, maybe 3rd, 4th round, I'll call you. So my parents weren't even in town. They were in Spain having the time of their life. And I was up in Phoenix, and I might have gone out the night before with my siblings and some friends. So I get a phone call from my agent, like, where are you? We're on pick 14. And I'm like, oh my God. So I'm like, hustle down to the draft room. And it's all of us that were in my agent's, paddock or corral. And, the pick 25 is coming up. And we get a phone call. It says, if Detroit doesn't take Robert Porcher, then we're going to draft you. You good with that? And I'm like, yeah, I'll go anywhere in the first round. I mean, I don't care. I didn't even think about it. I was just head over heels, just outside of myself. And sure enough, Detroit picks Robert Porcher. And then the next pick, they're like, we're picking you. And I'm like, okay, man, there we go. It was like everybody in the room. There were like 100 people in the room, and it's up on the big TV, which back in those days was like a big TV. And they're just like screaming, "Oh my God, I got picked!" And I was just like, I couldn't process it. It's just, I still to this day think like I can't remember what I was thinking because I was in shock. Yeah. It was a just magical feeling. And then you guys reminded me that Tre'Davious White and I are draft brothers.
Yeah.
Yes.
Number 1, round 1, pick 27.
Pick 27. Yes. Absolutely. So that's it, man. It's kind of a convoluted tale, just like the way it all happened. Mel Kiper, had me ranked as like the 30th best tackle in the draft. Wow. I mean, not even guard, center tackle, just so it was crazy. And then to know that Buffalo and Rochester are 60 miles apart, and I got all this family there. My cousins, the version that my cousins tell is even better because my father's older brother, Uncle Joe, is one of those like kind of expressionless, quiet guys, right? So they're watching the draft, and I get drafted, and my cousin, who's hilarious, Joey Fina says, and there's Uncle Joe. And all of a sudden you see this tears start to form in his eyes, right? And he almost got a little quiver in his lip, and he's getting like emotional. You can tell he's getting emotional, right? Because he looks like this. So he has to get up and he removes himself from the room, right? Because my family would see each other like every 5 years or 6 years or 7 years. But then I get drafted by the Bills, and it's a family reunion 4 times a year. It was insane. My aunt and uncle and my cousins came to every game. I would leave the locker room. By the time I got home, my aunt had a pot of sauce on the stove. The pasta was ready, the meatballs, the sausage. And I had a whole, like this huge, I was just in a cocoon of family. It was insane. It was incredible.
That's awesome. So let me ask you this, like, did it make that day any more special, or in your head, what was the value of being drafted to like a juggernaut like the Buffalo Bills at that time?
I followed the Bills because Glenn Parker was there, and he and I were teammates at Arizona, and the Bills picked Glenn in the 3rd or 4th, I can't remember. So I stayed in contact with Glenn, and he would tell me about the protection schemes and this and that, and then talking to my cousins about how close Rochester and Buffalo are. And, they're like, wouldn't it be cool if, and I'm like, yeah, I know, but come on. I mean, what's the chances? Yeah. I still, gotta, get picked or go undrafted and then make a squad, so you like, it's kind of like, like, I don't want to jinx it. But then when I got picked by them, I was just like, oh my God, it was crazy. And my brother lives in New York City. My girlfriend, now my wife, was living in New York City. So I was in hog heaven, man. I loved it. And then I got to a team that was really seasoned, I mean, veterans. And I got unbelievable guidance from guys like Pete Metzelaars and Mark Pike, God rest his soul, and Steve Tasker and Kent Hull and Glenn and Howard Ballard. It was just incredible. I mean, and to be there with Jim Kelly and Thurman Thomas and Andre Reid and Bruce Smith and Daryl Talley, who is, I talked to Daryl today. Love that guy. There's a special, Daryl Talley's a special dude. And Glenn Parker and I live in the same city together, and we're getting together more. And it was a great place to land. It was a great place to land. And I don't care. People are like, oh, Buffalo, it's awful. I guess I love the city. And I mean, if the weather wasn't the weather, I probably would have never left. I tell people I've been to a lot of places in this country, and Buffalo is the most magnificent representation of a good, traditional American city, from the history, the architecture, the food, the people, I'm just so glad the Bills are still going to be there. I was kind of like, it was hitting home. Like, what would I do? Like, if they left and they kept the name in Buffalo, and then like the people and the whole thing went to wherever, I mean, Arkansas, Texas, Idaho, whatever, I would be like, I would feel like displaced.
I would lose like a piece of my soul.
This city would be broken.
Yeah, I don't even know. Like, that's weird to even think about. Yeah,
I know. I had a moment like that, and I shuddered. This was me shuddering.
So I mean, I had a few like questions lined up, and you kind of went through a lot of them. So
sorry, I get diarrhea in the mouth, bro.
It's perfectly fine, because I was gonna ask you them anyway. I just have to jump down a couple. Okay, so the last question I was gonna ask you was most impactful teammates, but you mentioned Pete Metzelaars and Daryl Talley and Steve Tasker and all these great people you've had, that helped you out in your time there. So I did a video on Steve Tasker once. I've never spoken to him, and I hope to one day, but I did do a video that he acknowledged. So I do take pride in that, and I will take that in the video. There was a quote where he says, he wouldn't have traded it to be with any other group of guys, that run that you guys went on. And, it makes me think then these guys must have been like extremely close as a football team, on top of already being like an all-time great football team. So I wanted to ask you, like, what are some of your favorite like team memories that you have from back then? Like, situations maybe in practice or the locker room, or even in games.
Yeah. Some of those you just can't share, but
yeah. Those are the best ones, I bet.
Yeah, there were a lot of moments where, I'll tell you one thing that I loved about Jim, and I especially loved about Thurman, was just that vocal leadership of expectation. So, I'm on the field, and I'm not having a particularly good series, and Thurman just gets right up in my face. He's like, what the hell, just MFing me right in my face. And I'm like, oh man, the expectation is so high in this group, and, just to achieve excellence and never lose a single rep. And I'm just killing myself. Right. So I'm fighting, I'm battling back. And then I don't know, Thurman did something stupid, missed a block or dropped the ball or what have you. And he immediately comes up to me after the play and just gets right in my face. And I'm thinking to myself, why are you going to MF me, bro? You just put the ball on the ground. It wasn't me. Yeah. And he just says, give it back. Like, I'll dish it, but I can take it too.
Right.
And there's just that ownership. And Jim Kelly was like that too. I mean, he owned his shortcomings, bad throws, bad calls, whatever. And there was a lot of that in the locker room, but the locker room was fun and funny too. It had a nice atmosphere. Guys would prank each other a little bit. We had a guy come up from Miami who will remain nameless because I don't want to shame him. And he didn't get it. Like, in my day, Miami Dolphins, I was like, no, like it's mortal enemy. Yeah. I know, I guess everybody hates New England now, but Dolphins.
No, we don't like Miami or New York either.
Ooh, so this new guy comes in, he's wearing a Dolphins shirt, and everybody was like, what?
In the Bills locker room?
In the locker room, we're like, yo, bro,
Yeah.
So anyway, so nobody says anything. And then after practice, one of the guys comes in, and it was early in the season, right? Summertime, hot. You come in, you're just soaked, sweating. And one of the guys comes in, and before he gets in the shower, he grabs the shirt. He's totally naked, grabs the shirt out of his locker in front of him, runs it up under his armpits in his area, and then hangs it back up in his locker. He's like, "There, dude, there's your shirt."
Oh my God. Good.
Went right in the trash.
That makes me proud as a Bills fan to hear that those people are, you guys are in the locker room and you feel that way about the team. That's awesome.
And then, it was always fun when, like, if Arizona was going to play, Arizona played Penn State, right? And Sam Gash was like, "All right, bro, you got to wear the gear. You bet $50 or whatever." Yeah. I don't like betting on sports, but I had to wear Penn State gear. And, it's just like those bets are awesome. I mean, it's just hilarious,
especially when you win and you have to watch your friend do it. That's the best part.
Yeah, but I played at Arizona. We were pretty bad for a while, so I didn't get to see a lot of victories. So
you're talking to Buffalo sports fans. So
yeah, I know, and I kind of got lucky, fellas. I leave Buffalo, and they got really bad. And at the very same time, I'm raising my kids, and I don't have time to be involved anyway. Mm-hmm. So I got to skip like 10 years, maybe even 12, 14 years of the garbage because I got 4 kids I was raising.
So this would be from 2002 to like 2012?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah, my oldest, Mimi, who graduated ASU, is going to, she'll be 22 next week. So she was born in 2000. And then I had I got one at UCLA playing offensive line at UCLA, and my daughter Stella is 18, and the youngest is almost 16 playing football.
That's awesome. Okay, so the one at UCLA, what year is he in?
He's going to go into his 3rd season, offensive lineman, and he's battling for playing time.
Is he redshirt sophomore or junior?
Yeah, I guess. I don't know how that goes. He redshirted his first year, so then he was a redshirt freshman. Now he's a redshirt sophomore. I don't know. I just say he's in his 3rd year, and he redshirted one of them.
Yeah, so redshirt sophomore. Same. It just gives you an extra year of eligibility.
Yeah, give him a follow on Twitter. It's at Bruno Fina 70, I think.
Bruno Fina 70. All right, guys. So make sure
probably
you guys
the only Bruno Fina on Twitter. I mean,
yeah, if you look up anything, Fina, typically you guys pop up.
And I'm sure you're following Mimi, right? Because we got Mimi Mondays now. We got Fina Fridays. It's crazy out there. The whole world is just crazy with
Fina taking over.
I didn't want
the
to
Fina take over. Okay, so.
It's been a lot of fun. All right, next question. Let's go.
Well, I was just going to ask you because you mentioned how you guys' locker room, you played at a high level, but then you also mentioned there was pranking and goofiness a little bit. And anybody who pays close attention to the Bills, you can kind of see that Josh is a really goofy guy. You can tell. I spoke with Terrell Dotson a few weeks ago, and he mentioned how the linebackers, they prank each other all the time, and they're really, So do you see those, those parallels in this current iteration of the Buffalo Bills that you've seen back in your championship days?
Totally. I mean, and what I tell people all the time, I'm like, we're so lucky, right? We get to love our team. And we get to see them and their antics all over the place because of social media department from the Buffalo Bills, right? Like you get to peer into it in such a rewarding way, and it brings those players closer to us. It's really fantastic. I love it. I mean, the way Stephon Diggs cuts it up out there, I'm like, God, I want to be back out there just to hang out with that guy, I mean, he's fascinating dude. And Josh, of course, is the same way. But it's just a lucky time with the technology that we have that you can get so close to the people that you hold in such high regard. In our day, it was like, and Bruce Smith and I, were emblematic of our dislike of a few writers in particular, But that was the problem is like the only outlet that our image was made to the public was controlled by like 1 or 2 radio stations and then 1 or 2 newspapers. So people like you guys wouldn't get to know me the way you get to know Diggs and Allen and Poyer, right? Yeah. And Hyde, the way you get to know them. I mean, look at Ed Oliver riding up on his horse. And I grew up riding horses, right? So I'm like, to me, I'm like instantly like, Ed Oliver and I are brothers, right? We both rode horses like crazy. I used to ride like every day.
So on the flip side of that, do you think it was maybe easier being an athlete back then because you weren't under such a strenuous spotlight? Maybe you got away with a few more things.
So I think that if you don't have the ability to cut out the noise, then it would be a real problem for you. Right. So for me, I'm not in the spotlight, so to speak, but we all are when we're on Twitter, and especially the past 12 to 14 days, the amount of finger pointing, blaming, and just foul language being slung at people, if you get all wound up in that, then you shouldn't be on social media. So as a player, I think if people are like looking for reinforcement from social media and not as a plaything, then they've got a real problem. And that's what I say. That's what I tell people all the time. Like, Twitter is for me. They invented it for me. I'm not obligated to do anything on there except entertain me.
Yeah.
And you're welcome for me inventing it.
Yeah, I was just so talking about, you kind of touched on how you guys, the Dolphins were the team at the time you guys hated. And, I guess, when I think about it, I'm sure you guys do pay attention to, maybe the outside noise, what's being written about you. I'm sure you guys, definitely pay attention to that to an extent. But I was wondering, like, do you guys take the rivalries against like the Dolphins? And I guess you already did kind of answer this question, but as seriously as like us fans do, or with rivalries, like, do you guys see it in
that's true.
Light?
Yeah.
Oh, hell yes. No, it was literally like, Monday you come in after the game and you watch film, you get treatment, ice down, swim, whatever. And then Tuesday's league day off, but you go in and work out or do what you got to do. I mean, I was at the stadium 7 days a week, or the facility. And then you come in Wednesday morning and it's like a whole different vibe. And it's like, hey, it's Dolphins week. You can't do that shit. This is Dolphins week. Like, this is Dolphins week. But, we were talking about how goof around, prank a little bit. And I think about the movie Armageddon, right? Remember that movie? And they're getting ready. They're going to go fly up and slingshot around the moon and blow up the asteroid, right? It's like the night before they go. And Bruce Willis says, we got to let them go out, man. They're about to blow up. And that's a little bit like the intensity of being a professional football player. And I can't speak to the other sports, but you've just like, you're on the edge of a knife, just with the intensity that you're building up. And you just become, I don't want to say, you just become an agent of this focus that you've put in. And it's like almost at a breaking point. You only get, now it's 17, but it used to just be 16 opportunities to show that you're worth a crap, that you're worth being hired again next year, and in the fact that you're going to go out and you're battling hand-to-hand combat with a guy across from you, and it's in front of the entire world, man. So those moments when you get a chance to laugh hard and deep, we just savored those. Like, we turned into like a bunch of, cackling old men at a bridge table, right? Just yucking it up, right? But you walk into that locker room on Wednesday morning, and it's Dolphins week.
Button up.
There's no screwing around. You can button it up. And then, like, you be in practice, guy drop ball. You're like, you can't drop ball. It's Dolphins week. What the hell's going on?
All right. Yeah, go and to pair along, because these are all things you've touched on. And, you mentioned the Bill Belichick workout you had. And, for me, just as a third person listener, hearing that through you, at the time, I'm sure that was shell shocking to hear him say you're a first round pick. I'm sure at the time. But when looking back now, realizing what Bill Belichick has done in this game, has that kind of revolutionized that moment for you on top of how special it already was?
Well, just so you know, that was his very first moment of brilliance. I mean,
that's when you knew you would be a good coach.
it may take me reminding him that he was brilliant in that very moment. I think it's just great to be recognized by anybody, and given the things that I do appreciate now about social media is like spread joy, right? So if I appreciate you for whatever, just thank you. I went to a Father of the Year fundraiser in Tucson, and these people work really hard at these events, and on my way out, I just stopped and said, hey, thanks for busting your butt for us so we could sit down and raise money for, type 1 diabetes. So I think that whether he ever thought about it ever again, what he did for me that was a gift that I'll cherish forever.
Right.
And we're all capable of giving those gifts. It is nice that he is, kind of known as a wizard, although there are people like Joe Miller who say, I don't know. I mean, where'd all that wizardry go? The coaching tree isn't all that fruitful. We're not getting any peaches off of that tree. It's rotten stone fruit, right? So it felt great. And it's one of the great moments outside of actually being a Buffalo Bill associated with the NFL that I get to keep with me and share with you wonderful gentlemen. And who's tall? Who's taller than me?
Well, my man Caveman here is 6'10", so
yeah.
No.
He's 6'10". This guy is tremendously tall, and you would never guess it.
Everybody's always like, "Oh, it's so nice to be tall," and I'm like, "Yeah, you ever buy pants?"
Yeah. Oh my gosh, the worst, absolute worst. And then like your wingspan is really long, so like shirts are short and things.
Oh my god! Yeah. And then how big are your feet?
I was going to ask that.
15, right? So this is how it works, Michael, just to clue you in, right? If you're a size 13 or under, you get all the styles, right?
Oh my goodness,
you get all the styles. And then if you're 14 and under, you get 40% of the styles. And if you're 15, you get 11% of the styles.
Yep.
The footwear jealousy.
And then if we have to get it, it's like super expensive.
Oh yeah, you know what though? I mean, I love the Colhans now. I mean, we get such a nice deal with the NFL. The Colhans, bro. Yeah,
those are nice.
Yeah, lightweight, comfortable.
Very nice.
I'll hook you up, man. Not you, Michael. You can buy any shit.
I never thought I'd be on a podcast with two people that were over the average height and foot size. I mean, this is. I feel I'm a part of the minority in this kind of sense. It's kind of a remarkable thing. Like I think size 11 feet. I think that's where I come
so you're used to having
tall men with big feet marginalized by the retail industry. Unite
by the world, to be honest. Like plane seats are horrible. Like,
oh my god. Yeah, you're worse than me, dude. And it's like I used to never fly Delta because it was different than American by that much, and I could just like squeeze in. Yeah. And then forget stadium seats. I went to my daughter's graduation at ASU, and the only thing that helped is I lost all the weight. But I'm looking at my son, who's like 6'4 3/4. He's like 295 now, and he's just like miserable, like moving around. I'm like, get used to it, buddy.
Oh my goodness. So being such a large man, when you were, in the NFL, and I guess, not even knowing you were going to be a first round pick until basically right before the draft. Like, I mean, I know it was combine and rookie where I get it, but like on the grand scheme of things, that's essentially basically right before the draft. You know what I mean? So then to have, a 10-year NFL career where you're helping teams, win conference championships, you have such success. Like, did you think that's something you had in you? And when you look back on your career, what are you most proud of, for accomplishing that?
Well, you got to have the offensive lineman mindset, right? So you don't think about like you think about being part of the machinery that makes it go, right? We're not the hood ornament. We're the pistons, right? So you constantly just like you just train yourself to like I got to pull my part of the load, but that's kind of the way. Credit. Yeah, but no, I think no more than that. Like you get the satisfaction out of just being part of something great because you never score touchdowns. And that's a
You
work
score
ethic.
touchdowns, but okay.
Well, I got one. But that's the work ethic, right? So I think like a lot of guys get that from their family. So my parents moved out to Tucson, Arizona, and bought a house that probably should have been torn down. But they had 5 boys, and my father grew up, poor in Rochester, and he learned how to, be a plumber and lay brick and do electrical and do plumbing. So I grew up literally on the weekends from dawn to dusk working at the house. And I was thinking about it the other day. I probably mixed, I don't know, probably 400 to 500 wheelbarrows full of concrete. I mean, my older brothers got to run the block, right? They were all the talented guys, but I had to do all just the grunt work, moving bags of concrete and mixing and lime. And, I think those are translatable skills into offensive line play. No glory, all dirt, all sweat, all tears, and just kind of put your shoulder on the wheel and push.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and no, go ahead. You go.
I was just gonna say, I get it. You gotta kind of just play your part and be, a cog in this big machine that it ultimately has a duty or a responsibility to accomplish. But even after coming out of that and being a part of the Bills team, like you said, you took a decade, to raise your children and things like that. But you came back to the community and you've been a really big part of the community, specifically like the social media part of the community, right? And like it's been awesome being able to communicate with what made you so comfortable with Bills Mafia?
Oh, well, I think I have a screw loose, number one. I don't have a filter. I've filtered out so much in this hour, you can't even believe
Please
it.
Don't. You can say literally whatever you want.
Yeah, no, I'm just playing. But I think so. I think we base a lot of our actions on either our shortcomings or our regrets or maybe envy, right? Like I'm a little envious that I didn't get to be a Bill during this time where I could have been closer to the fans, on a much larger scale. I think I took the game so seriously. I didn't. When we lost, I was just devastated, and I had a really hard time with losing, and I think going back on it, I think that it probably maybe sucked some of the joy out of being there and being in that position, So I think some of it's a clawback. I'm trying to regain something that I might have, that 10% that I should have relished in the moment. I didn't. Maybe it was 20%. But what happened was my son was starting to get recruited. And you got to be on Twitter, right? All these kids are on Twitter. So I opened a Twitter account, maybe even before that, but I never did anything with it. And I started like, well, what do I like? I like the Buffalo Bills. So I just started showing up on friending, following, whatever. And then people were like, is it really you? Is this the real John Fina? And I'm like, yeah, I guess. I think it's me. And then I have this sense of humor. I see things, and I'm one of those people that's like, there's a comment and delete, and there's the comment and then delete, because it's hard to translate humor all the time. So I do get in I try to make it fun. I like to keep it light, and I like people, and I like engaging with people. And I think this really satisfies that part of my personality where I can be kind of a clown, an entertainer, maybe prod people a little bit. And it just so happens that, then Joe Miller says, hey, DMs me, which I hate that expression, but sends me a message on the side. It's like, hey, you want to do a podcast? And I'm like, and I have this horrible problem that I can't say no to anything, which is why I'm here. Like and in the end, I'm like, I'm so glad I did that. Right. But people are like, do you want to do a podcast? And I'm like, unless I have like an actual conflict, then I'm probably going to be on your podcast. So I just love engaging in it. And again, I love the city of Buffalo. I think it's such a rich experience if you go out there and you just soak in a true American city that it brings me back there. And I had, well, look, I mean, I had 10 great years in Buffalo. Even the crappy ones were great years because of the friends that I have there, and just the love I have for the city. And I loved it. I lived downtown, and I think that probably solidified it for me. My first year, I lived out in Orchard Park, and I was miserable. I was a first-round pick with plenty of money to live anywhere I wanted, and I was miserable. And then after my rookie year, I moved up to the city, and I was like, "Oh my God, I love it, love it." And I feel like that was almost like a, like had I not made that decision, I probably wouldn't feel so woven into the fabric of Buffalo. And I think that,
That's
what good would it be to be a Buffalo Bill and not like love where you are? I mean, and then you're just like punching a clock.
Yeah, absolutely.
and that's the part that I feel like, I mean, obviously that's part of what makes us, so unique as a fan base, as a community, as a city. But I mean, you hear, at least from the outside world, that Buffalo's this drag city. There's nothing good about it. Bad weather, ugly coloring. What are you going to go do down there? Blah, blah, blah. Like the whole 9 yards, right? But it's like every single time somebody comes here, or, there's an athlete that plays here, they always say that was the best place that I played at, or this is where I love to play. This is where I felt, the most happy, or there was the most family community atmosphere, right? I mean, we had Ryan Fitzpatrick. He was at least at the time, a starting quarterback for a whole different franchise, coming to a playoff game in Buffalo and screaming just like a maniac fan would that you'd see 3 rows down. I mean, it just speaks to the sentiment of what goes on here.
Well, and I grew up, like, my parents were very traditional Socratic method educated people. My mom went to Nazareth College in Rochester. My dad went to St. John Fisher. So I got a real kind of classic upbringing, even outside of school. So on those days when we were out working, it was, opera music, Luciano Pavarotti blaring, and my parents, when they went out, they would always go to the theater in Tucson. They went to the opera, they went to the theater, they went to like the really small theaters doing kind of like the lesser known works. So I was totally kind of wrapped up in that sort of thing. And when I got to Buffalo, there were tons of tiny little playhouses, whatever, where they were doing these plays from unknown playwrights, and the music, forget about it. I mean, the shows that came to the Trough, I mean, I was at the Trafalmador all the time. I saw shows that I never would have seen if I lived in Tucson, Arizona. And just the venues and the locations of going to these. I remember I saw we used to get the Art Voice. Do they still have the Art Voice? It was a newspaper back then. It's probably online now. Yeah, and I used to scan the back page, and I was like, I'm going to go to this play. And I went to this play, and it was in a building that, of course, in 1993 was abandoned somewhere off of Chippewa. And it was like on the 4th floor. I'm like, what is going on? Like, this is creepy as hell. And you go into like this big room, and they converted this room into basically almost like one of those abandoned office buildings into a theater. And I was like, I feel so cool. Like, I've never felt so cool. And I saw this obscure play that probably never got done again. And, just hanging around with just solid people, like, it was awesome. I had an experience like that every week. I had, between my good friends Lou Seidel and Brett Blumberg and Howard Gartenberg and everybody that Vincent McConaughey and Maura Crawford, they own the Left Bank, and then they own the La Metro. I was kind of embedded into this community, and they would take me to these places that most people who played for the Bills would never see, just like these random restaurants in these neighborhoods. And I saw a part of Buffalo, I think, that most players don't get to see, and going to the Broadway market. My buddy and I would go between Thanksgiving and Christmas. We buy a dozen ducks, and we would butcher the ducks, listening to music all day long and packing them in salt and herbs and making duck confit. And then we'd have the party with all of our buddies over and the ladies, and we'd just go crazy. Every Wednesday night we used to do a boys' night. We'd either cook at my place or Lou's place, and and it was awesome. I
So
just loved it.
So before I do want to get back to this a little bit, because I do want to talk to you about your podcast and everything. But for bonus points, Mr. John Fina, do you know where the term Tralfamador originates?
You know the answer to this?
I don't. I mean, I would shoot. I mean, if I had to throw a guess out there, I would imagine it was some quasi-military reference to somebody who defended the the Erie Canal from takeover from some wackadoo Canadian or something, right?
It's
the Trump saved us.
It's actually Kurt Vonnegut, Slaughterhouse-Five. It's a term from.
Is that where it comes from?
It is.
No kidding.
Is. Yeah.
Slaughterhouse-Five. See, I read Fahrenheit 451. Wasn't that Vonnegut?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure I read Slaughterhouse-Five, but Vonnegut was kind of like New Age. I did a self-study literature course at the U of A because I took so many classes. I wanted to keep getting that scholarship check, so they let me build my own like reading course. So one semester I did all the Russian authors, and in another semester I did all of like Gabriel Garcia Marquez. So I read all this crazy stuff.
See, that it's beautiful. Like, experience people always have all these stories to tell, and it's awesome to hear you express it in such a charismatic and entertaining way. So thank you for sharing your stories. But I did want to ask you about your podcast because you mentioned our guy on the Caveman. You actually work really well with two people I consider good friends, and Joe Miller, as well as Jay Spence the King. So you getting your own podcast, we see you, and how entertaining you are, and how you speak, your presence and everything like that. Was there a transition into podcasting that you had to take, or was it just natural?
Well, you kind of have to rewind the clock. So when I got out of the NFL, I actually was I was doing analyst work for high school football games, and then I started transitioning into some college games here and there. I did 2 seasons of the Arizona Wildcats, and here's the funny thing. So, and we had a friend who was an actress, and she's like, "You got to be huge on camera because when it translates through the screen, everything sounds." So, I did my first college game. And the next day I called the producer and I said, "What do you think?" And he's like, "Yeah, it was good." And I could tell. And I'm like, "Look, dude, I played football more than half my life. Like, take the gloves off. Just tell me." And he's like, "It was pretty horrible." Yeah. I'm like, "What?" He said, "It sounded like you had a mouthful of marbles and you weren't passionate about anything." And I'm like, "Okay, well, send me the DVD." So I got the DVD and I listened to it. I was like, "God, you're the worst. This is horrible." So I learned a lot from that experience. Like, you have to really bring it out because it goes from 11 down to 6 when it comes through. So that was a great experience learning that. And I had no plans to do any podcasting, and Joe reached out to me. And of course, we did a quarterly show the first time. Last year we did it every week except when Monday Night Football was on. And it's just been really rewarding. It brings me closer to the game. We get to break down some plays. I know it doesn't translate well on a download, but I love it because I love just the access I have to the game and just getting reconnected to the nitty gritty. And then, lucky to work with Spence, and finally, he lives only like 120 miles from here.
Yeah.
We connected. And then what was really amazing is I did his show, but he had Levi Wallace on. So he said, "Do you mind if we just do it as, you and I have Levi?" And I was like, "Are you kidding me? The guy's from my hometown, and I just think he's fantastic."
Is he really?
Oh my God. Oh my God. Yeah. So Levi played high school here in Tucson. To hear him tell the story was like, go back. I was like in tears. I'm like, I think I have a cool story. I can't even hold a candle to this guy. He walked on at Alabama, but he didn't go there to be a walk-on. He was just a student because his dad went there. And then he played in intramural football, and everybody's like, "You should go to the open tryouts that Saban has, and then he did that, and he worked his way really the longest, hardest possible way. And
in Alabama, no less. Like, there's not slouches out there.
Yeah.
That's
and then awesome. Levi has a foundation, and he had a golf tournament. I missed Jordan Poyer, but I did get to meet a few of the other guys that were in town, and Spence was there. So, we just hung out, chatted for a while. It was graduation the next day, so I couldn't play in Levi's golf tournament. But I mean, that's the thing for me, is like, I'm still a fan of people, and meeting Levi like that, like I'm like a real fan. When I met LaDainian Tomlinson, I was shaking. I was like, oh my God, this was incredible. And when I met Mean Joe Green, because I did my 11th year with the Cardinals, and I'm not kidding you, when I was a kid, I was like, that's me. I'm Mean Joe Green. It's like not even a discussion.
Yeah.
And then I didn't realize he was on the staff there. And I'd literally walk up and I'm like, I get to meet Mean Joe Green. I peed myself. I swear to God, I peed
Okay,
myself.
so you get starstruck. So what's it like when people get starstruck when they meet you?
I just tell them that I'm flattered. I'm very appreciative.
No, you seem like an extremely down to earth guy, but like, you still a legend. You know what I mean? Like, so
I try to be. I think that's much more fun. Like, somebody said to me, and I won't reveal who it is. They're like, you can't be so engaging. You're going to ruin your brand. You're going to give up with the mystery. And I'm like, who am I hiding from? Like, I mean, what brand do I actually have? And I'm like, I like
terrible people. That only works for terrible people. When you're actually a good person people want to engage with, it's in your better interest to engage.
I think so. And I just find it so much more rewarding. I mean, here's the way I think about it. Like, if me being nice to you, acknowledging you, thanking you for being a fan, giving you an autograph, makes you feel good. I mean, I'm like Santa Claus. I mean, I personally don't find myself that impressive, but if you do, then I'll play it up. God love you. I think it's just fun. I still get fan mail, and I still send it back. And I love it. I think it's fantastic.
That is awesome.
Yeah. I mean, that's got to be a really cool feeling to be able to, realize, like when you mentioned the Mean Joe Green story, I mean, that's got to be one of those moments that obviously you're going to remember forever. But it's like you're almost in the middle of like that kind of scenario, if you will. Like you were that person meeting somebody else, but then you are the person to somebody else. So you're kind of like the middle connection there. So it's got to be a really, I think, you've spoken to the sentiment enough, a rewarding feeling. And, I played, high school hockey growing up, which is obviously not comparable, but, seeing the middle schoolers or, the kids on the JV team watch the games. And it was like, that little bit of a rewarding feeling, because they look up and they're seeing you and they're like, I'm going to be there one day. It's kind of like, it was kind of, in my own little world,
pay it forward,
same
right?
sort of, yeah. And it was part of the game that I cherished.
It did get hard a little bit, at training camp when you're signing autographs. I signed autographs before and after every practice. And at some point, you just got to say, like, after 10 minutes, you're like, look, the next one has to be the last one.
Yeah.
And I would always like feel bad, but I'm like, I got to get out of the sun. I got to get my feet up.
Right.
Especially my rookie year, where I was just getting slaughtered every practice. And I was so miserable. I'm like, I don't belong here. What the hell is going on? I was like, you made a mistake.
Again, that's got to be an adjustment going from college to the NFL.
That actually plays perfect into one of the questions I had. What was your, if you had one, which I think probably a lot of professional players do, you're like coming into the NFL moment, like, oh shit, this is like real. Like this is the real thing here. Like the coming to the NFL moment, if you will.
So it was training camp, and I actually,
no.
no. That was second year. That was second year. I mean, I knew I was cannon fodder for Bruce, but Bruce was a little bit like, "Hey, rookie, don't put your hands on me," and I was like,
really?
"Of course not." My first year, we were doing a drill that was kind of like an inside five, and it was, the twos against the ones or something like that, and like an idiot, I was probably going like 50%, and Mark Maddox was going like 150%. And he folded me. And I was like, hit me so hard, folded me sideways, backwards, and upside down. And I sprained my toe like so bad. And I was like, and then we watched it on film, and they're just like rewinding it, like, what is this? What is this? What is this? And he's just like, oh my God. I'm like, he killed me. And I always thought, God, Mark is such a jerk. I was so mad at him for that. And then it was 2 years ago, he invited me on to, Mark's a great guy too, raises money for Buffalo charities and Phoenix charity. And I said, dude, I always thought you hated me. Like, that in practice, you were just such a jerk. And he's like, John, I always liked you. I was a bubble guy. I felt like I had to, every single rep, I had to make the team. And I was just, you could have been anybody. It wasn't about you. It was about me. And I was like, oh my God, I'm such a fool. I thought it was about me, and it was just the guy who just wanted to make the squad. And anyway, we're good friends now, but that's another thing, like, try to interpret what your motivations are before you try to interpret others, right?
Yeah.
So like I'm putting this on Mark Maddox, and he has no idea. Like,
it was nothing personal.
Yeah, I constructed that. Mm-hmm. That had nothing to do with him. That was all up in this tiny little, treadmill.
Yeah, that goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Is we could have a conversation and we may disagree or whatever, but because perspectives are important, and gathering perspectives and having everybody's point of view is important to come up with solutions. So sometimes things aren't even the way you think they are, but yeah. So we do want to talk to you about this current iteration of the Bills team and what your thoughts on them are. So we have a question in the realm of that, and I kind of want to pose this to you because I'm interested to see what you think about it.
Okay.
Now the Buffalo Bills have a ton of weapons, right? Mm-hmm. Do you think maybe OBJ could be another?
Didn't he blow out his
Achilles
knee in the
or was it ACL?
I think it was his ACL. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think we need to concern ourselves with OBJ. I think we have the people in place. If we can protect, I do like the tight end addition. I can't think of his name. He was an Alabama tight end, right? He's the third year in the league or fourth year, or Oklahoma. The guy we just signed.
OJ Howard?
OJ Howard.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I think if we can protect, move the pocket, and get Josh into the position where we don't have him dropping back all the time, and continue to work on that moving the pocket type of offense, I don't think we need another weapon. I think we have plenty of people that can stretch it, and we have the right guys that can come underneath. So I'm okay. I'm okay with where we are. I mean, we got Saffold in at guard, right? We signed Quisenberry, and I think we should be okay at O-line. Spencer Brown, I think, is probably the biggest question mark at the moment. If he's going to be the starter, I think that is the real linchpin. But that might be OJ Howard, parking himself over there. It might be us chipping a little bit more. I'm super, super excited for the running back from Georgia, James
Cook.
Dalvin's brother, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm thrilled about that. So offensively, I'm in good shape. I think they can scheme it. I think all the pieces are there. I think you can hide some inexperience that Spencer might bring into his second year. You can scheme and game plan that. I'm thrilled that we got our cornerback, Kyer Allen. Elam. So that made me very happy. To me, that was it. After that pick, I was like, okay, pick whoever you want from here. And I think getting the kid from Boise State, that's our
Khalil Shakir.
Yeah, Khalil Shakir. I think that was an amazing pick. So if the defense can rally around true freshman cornerback and we can make that work, we're good.
Yeah, absolutely. We were talking about this earlier, but having Tre'Davious White gone for what we would think he would have to be gone for at least a quarter to half the season, coming off of an ACL. He had it at Thanksgiving, and that was toward the end of the season. And I don't really know if I would want him to be back week 1, honestly. Like, I'd really just want him to rest because do we need Tre'Davious White? 100%. Do we need Tre'Davious White week 1? I don't think so. I don't, we still had a very good secondary last year while he was gone, and it's going to be even better when he comes back. But I think that, a Dane Jackson, a Kyer Elam, Teron Johnson, Surrender, I think those guys can hold down the fort, until Tre'Davious, is healthy enough to go out there and be the cornerback we all know and love,
and I think you might look at it from this sort of concept that why do you get Von Miller, right? Well, you get Von Miller if your concern is that you can't do too much man-to-man in the secondary because you lost your number 1 corner. So we're going to have to play a little bit more zone, which makes it harder to get pressure on the quarterback. So what do? You get Von Miller, not just for his skill set, but for his veteran skill set, right? His tutelage, how he can help the younger guys. And they need to get better. We sound 2 defensive tackles. I'm terrible with names, fellas, but the kid
Tim Settle and Daquan Jones.
Yeah. I mean, if we have to be able to get pressure with 4 guys this year. And I think if we can win 3 of the first 4 games, and sit back a little bit in zone, make great plays, I think it'll also benefit Tremaine Edmonds to be in a little bit more zone with 4 guys who can get after the quarterback. I think we'll see elevated production out of him too.
So all right. So you mentioned how you think the defensive line, is improved. And I agree. I think rushing 4, that kind of speaks to the secondary. That's why I have even more confidence in it. Right. Because I look at last year and I'm like, well, our secondary was like shutting people down, and maybe the numbers don't necessarily reflect that all the time, but there was like almost little to no pass rush a lot of times, and quarterbacks are just sitting there in the pocket, and like initially they don't have anybody to go to the ball with, and then you would want a defender to be there in 3 to 4 seconds to not have him have too much time. And if you're counting 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, up to 4 Mississippi, the guy should theoretically be on the ground. Our corners are still covering, and this guy is still upright without any pressure in his face. So it's now 6-7 seconds, and he finally finds a guy, and then we're like, oh, we need a cornerback. And it's like, well, so that's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. And you know what killed me about the Kansas City game, right? So this is the part that just absolutely, I think about, when I coached, and I don't coach anymore, but I would always say to kids, I was like, who wins the football game? And they're always like, team with the most points. And I'm like, the team that makes the fewest mistakes, right? And if you go back and look, and I don't think we had quite as much pressure on Patrick Mahomes as we would have enjoyed, but when we did, he escaped. And I got to tell you, looking at the game, I'm like, he made no mistakes. Like, he didn't make poor throws. And then they go and they play the Bengals, and he made about 5 glaring mistakes. And I was like, why couldn't we get those? Like, we're just like, who makes the one mistake, and then we make the mistake, and then game's over. And you're like, oh my God. But I was so upset. I mean, he played such a great game, and I'm not a great fan of Kansas City, and I'm only a mild fan of Patrick Mahomes, but that game was so, it was incredible, and so few mistakes were made by the quarterbacks. It was something else.
The reason we couldn't make the mistake is because, I mean, respectfully, excuse me, we didn't have Sam Hubbard and Trey Hendrickson. We didn't have guys that were just high motor, are going to go get the quarterback no matter what, and are going to make a play no matter who's stopping you. I am happy with the guys we have, but if you would have told me we would have a Von Miller last year, we'd have a second year of Greg Rousseau with Von Miller tutelage, we'd have a fourth year of Ed Oliver, I'd feel a lot more comfortable in that Kansas City game.
Yeah.
And if you guys remember that first drive, you mentioned it, Patrick Mahomes was running for his life. There was pressure,
but he ended up converting them. Like
exactly.
Whether it was a pass or I was like, he just like was covered in grease, and it was so.
And it also speaks to how good the secondary must have been playing for him not to be able to find anybody.
Yeah.
So
it was rough. I got to say, and you look at this team, like going back to the personalities, Michael, Justice, you like. The fact that you just see them, you see the clips on Twitter, right? You see them from OTAs, and they're in a good place, I think, and I think you have to always balance like how much of the baggage that you bring with you from, the last disappointment, right? Like you have to be able to, you have to recognize it, but not dwell on it, right? You have to hold the memory, not the feeling, or the feeling, not the memory. I can't remember which, but I'm excited for this season. I mean, I'm excited. I hope you guys will have me back on and do a show.
Oh man, anytime, literally.
So we'll and thanks for having me. It's fun. I really enjoy getting to meet you guys, and it's one thing to see you on Twitter and read what you write and, your commentary and like, okay, I get it. I see where you're coming from. And then to actually have an exchange with you, that's what it's all about. I'm here for the exchanges.
Absolutely. 100%. And we'd love to talk to you all night, but I'm sure you have a busy life, maybe being an NFL legend and all that. Caveman, did you have anything else you wanted to ask Mr. Fina?
I mean, you did just touch on it at the end. I was going to ask, like, that being able to get over previous disappointments and being able to learn from it but not let it haunt you to an impactful extent the next time you're in another situation similar. Do you think that different guys handle it differently from the year prior, speaking on the Super Bowl years, of course? Do you think some guys were able to handle it better than others, or everybody was able to collectively move as a group, move as a unit, and go on to the season after?
I never thought about it that way, but I got to tell you, I mean, when I got there, that was a pretty steely-eyed crew, man. I mean, those guys were like focused. There wasn't if there was anybody who was kind of slacking and not pulling the line, pulling the rope in the right direction, they got a talking to. Like, no, that shit didn't fly. You'd get somebody rolling up on you and saying, "Hey, you ain't doing it right." And so I don't think we really had a situation where you come back one year and the guy was on because he didn't fit in that way. Because the guys who remained, they were trained. You were molded. There was really, you didn't want to get excoriated by your teammate. You just didn't want it.
It goes to a part of the culture. If the culture is in, there are, good habits in the locker room and people are doing things the right way, they'll naturally, spread that to the younger guys coming in and looking and observing the older guys and how they do things, which goes to culture. I wanted to ask you that as well, what the culture looked like when you got there and playing in Super Bowls versus, in 2001 when the drought began. But we'll save that for another time. But so did you want to?
Well, no, I'll just, I'd love to address it in another show too, but that's a little bit like your GPA or your reputation, right? You got straight A's and you get a D and you never get it back up again, right? You have a great reputation and something bad happens, whether it's true or untrue. It's just hard to get it back. And when they went through the change, when they got rid of Wade Phillips and they got rid of John Butler, I think was it John Butler? No, yeah. And it went from the top down and it just disintegrated, man. They spent years building this powerful pyramid. And then in 1 year, they just swiped the bottom layer out and the thing just went.
Wow.
It was crazy. And then it never recovered, man.
Yeah.
And it was like the Gong Show of people going through there. Anyway, yeah, I probably should boogie. Thanks to everybody in the comments section. I've been trying to read through them anyway. I appreciate your feedback, and I'll let you guys close the show since it's your show. I tend to take over. And Joe's always like, hey, I close the show. I'm like,
you're perfectly fine. But yes, we do want to thank all of you guys for tuning in as always. You guys know we appreciate every like, every comment, subscription, share, retweet. Everything you guys do to support us, we appreciate it all. We also appreciate the legend, Mr. John Fina, for coming through tonight. And yeah, this was awesome. Like, this was incredible. So we will absolutely love to have you back on the show, and we will make that happen. And then we'll also, bond over being tall, people in this country. But thank you guys for tuning in. This is the official network of the Original Bills Mafia. I'm Justice. That's my man K-Man. This is Homefield Advantage. We are out. Go Bills.